All right. Hello.
Hello.
Welcome back to Effing with the Ineffable. I'm Zoe.
And I'm Will, Smokey Piggleton.
And this is episode 9. So welcome.
Wow, episode 9 already.
Yeah. It's weird though, because we did like 7 in a row, like within the span of like 10 days.
Right.
And now we waited a whole week in between these episodes. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because if we get out
of a flow, or
yeah.
we accumulate more content.
Yeah, I feel like I have so much.
Is it process or content? That's the key.
Yeah, I feel like I have so many things that came up in the week that I was like, oh, that would make a good show topic, but we already picked the show topic, so I don't know. It's good in a way. It makes me have to filter my thoughts more and think about it more, I guess, because I have a whole week of things to process through. But so how was your week? We haven't really been talking much lately, so how was your week?
Same old as far as work is concerned. It's a good week, fine week, just hanging out, watched a few movies.
Anything notable?
Citizen Kane, Notorious, Touch of Evil, which is also a Orson Welles movie. I think that was it. I can't remember any others right now.
All right.
I'm watching a lot of movies.
Yeah.
But we're expecting that maybe the COVID is going to pass through the inmate population soon, and that we'll go down from a code orange to just a code beige.
Hello.
Maybe.
Okay.
Code sunflower. I don't.
Well, that's good.
Code egg yolk. I love how they name these colors now after foods and things in nature.
Code mustard.
Yeah.
Do you know? Did you know that I went to the world, like the worldwide mustard museum? There's like a mustard museum for it's in right outside of Madison, Wisconsin, actually.
Yeah.
It's like the largest.
I was gonna say it's probably in Wisconsin.
Yeah, it's like one of the largest.
Home of the brat.
Yeah. That was they have like a mustard. This town outside of, I can't even remember which town it is now, but they have like a mustard fest every year where it's like a huge deal.
Probably down by Monroe or Huber or.
I think it's actually like Middleton, maybe, like right outside.
Okay.
Middleton. Anyway, really doesn't matter. Yeah, our week has been pretty good here. We've been, guess things have calmed down a bit. I honestly have not, I went on social media, I went on Twitter like one time this week, because I think I was trying to find something specific, and then I kind of went down the rabbit hole for like 10 minutes. But other than that,
easy to have happen.
Yeah. Other than that, I haven't really been reading any news or anything, and aside from like lots of helicopters going on overhead all the time here, things have been, I don't know, fairly normal. So I don't know if there's been any more Capitol unrest.
I don't think so, but now I heard yesterday some of the folks at work were talking about how the governor is fortifying the Capitol, and I think probably all governors are moving toward that.
Yeah.
Because of the expectation that there might be some unrest.
Yeah.
Which was kind of what kicked off our topic discussion this week. Was that article that I had read on the libertarian.org about the Trumpist tantrum. It was actually called, it was in Reason magazine.
Yeah, Reason.com.
Online magazine, and it was called Where Do We Go After the Trumpist Tantrum? with a subtitle, "When people are no longer willing to lose at the polls, it's time to make elections less important," which is, I think, an excellent point.
And I think
You
that's
know?
kind of like what we talked about last episode. Like we were saying, I don't know, we've talked about it lots of times before, I think, but like, you know, if libertarians had their way and the federal government had less power, people wouldn't care who the president was, because the only real job they would have would be to kind of veto stuff that's ridiculous, or you know, maybe introduce some things, but very little. And their main job is to direct the military, right? Isn't that like
and the police, yeah, provide for protection from internal and external aggression.
yeah. I mean, that's the whole purpose of the government, but yeah, especially the president, for sure. That's kind of his job. And like,
yeah, the federal government, the main thing there is just and I think to probably provide for disputes between states when there are some, but mainly to get out of, it was the process initially was to get out of the way and let states do their own governing and let things be a lot more local, which was the point that was made in this article.
yeah. That's actually, yeah.
It's interesting because it talked, we were just talking about protecting from aggression. And in that article, it referenced that 20% of Democrats look at Republican voters as being the country's worst enemy.
Yeah, it's a scary, I'm trying to find that exact. Yeah. 24% of likely US voters think Biden voters are America's biggest enemy as 2020 draws to a close, Rasmussen reports noted early in December. Nearly as many, 22%, regard Trump voters as the biggest enemy. That's insane. Like,
yeah, that Rasmussen report, that the results of that kind of show how distorted things are.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's a good thing that we have so few problems that our fellow citizens are looked at as being our worst problem. Okay. But it also speaks to a mindset where you look at other people as being your problem
and your enemy.
That's Sartre said other people are hell.
Yeah. Hell is other people.
And I guess that's because he probably looked at other people as a problem too. Mm-hmm. But if you look at other people as hell, you're in trouble.
That's an anti-biblical worldview. Like, if we are Catholics, which we are, or Christians, or Christ followers, or even just people who view other people as having inherent dignity, which
there's a universal brotherhood.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that much more in a little bit. But if you view people as having inherent dignity, then you view people as people to love and serve, right? Like that's our purpose. That's the way we're supposed to view other people, is as not objects, but as things to love, as people to love,
as persons.
Yes. So I have,
not as problems, as persons.
Yes. It's funny because I was listening to some podcasts yesterday, and one of them was kind of made me think. They didn't really quite say this exactly, but it made me think about it. Like, 22% regard Trump voters as the biggest enemy. 24% view Biden voters as the biggest enemy. First of all, I'm glad that I still keep thinking, like, whatever happened to ISIS? I'm so glad that nobody thinks ISIS is like our biggest enemy more. Like we used to be people in the U.S. used to be terrified of terrorists, of like actual terror attacks. Now we don't even think about that as being the biggest enemies. But also,
but it's interesting the way they talk about these different political factions, they always want to paint them with other brushes. I was listening to Morning Joe this morning. Mom had it on, and yeah, I know. And he was making this analogy between, oh, okay, Trump is the Trumpists are basically taking all their stuff out of the Mussolini fascism playbook. You
Yeah.
know, that they're basically doing a lot of the same stuff that the fascists were. So it's on the one side, they're always trying to paint you with the fascist brush.
Mm-hmm.
On the other side, they're always trying to paint you with the communist brush.
Yeah.
Instead of looking for what can we agree on that would be a good agenda for America. And really, maybe we don't need to agree on it. Maybe we just need to agree to mind our own business.
Yeah.
That if we just, the problem in the world is me. The biggest sinner I know is me.
Yeah.
I'm the one who has to change. I'm the one who has to be the change that I want to see in the world, not changing other people, not convincing other people how wrong-headed they are or how vicious and nasty they are, and canceling people or attacking people or whatever. Other people are not the problem.
Yeah.
The problem is that the government has gotten, and this is the point that he made, the government has gotten so big and so influential that it's that we can't trust other people to make decisions about it.
Yeah.
That's a problem. We need to take back the power into ourselves as individuals to affect our own life, rather than having the government be such a juggernaut that we say, I don't trust anybody else to steer this ship. It's got to be me and mine, rather than somebody else. And if so there's this huge anxiety because it's just become so out of balance.
Yeah. They say in this the Reason article, they say it's more and more dangerous to lose an election. Regulation has supplanted legislation. Executive orders have supplanted regulation. The vanishing ability to lose an election and not be crushed is the core reason for increased partisan vitriol and astounding violation of basic norms on both sides of our political divide. And I think that's true. Like, if you, it's funny to even think about the fact that the job of the president really is to direct the military, because it's like, how often does the president do everything but that? You know what I mean? It's like
exactly.
They have so much power that they just shouldn't have, honestly. Like in the system of checks and balances, they just shouldn't have it. I just think it's interesting, though. I was thinking about how, a lot of my friends actually here, and a lot of people all over the country, are very worried about kind of the outcomes of this election, the violence that's going on, all these riots and everything. But really, I was thinking last night, it was like, there are people in countries all over the planet that would literally like kill somebody to live here. You know what I mean? Like,
to have our problems.
Exactly. There are people like
first world problems.
Yeah, like if you think about the people who try to cross the border to get here, like not a lot of people coming from Canada, but like the Mexican border. If you think about those people, some of them have to sacrifice members of their family to get here, just for the hope that like the remaining members of their family will have a shot at a good life. Like, if you think about that for 10 minutes, it's like you start to realize, like, we think that we are all just like the enemies of each other, but we still live, we talk about this so much, this is like the patriotic show, but we honestly live in the freest country in the world. Like, a country where, think about the people, like, if you've ever heard the stories about people who escaped North Korea to get, not even to here necessarily, but just to like literally anywhere else. Their stories
they pretend to be dead and float down the river.
I mean, like, it's Oh, some of the stories are like truly like you can't read them without crying because they're so intense and terrible.
Horrific.
These
Yeah,
people
they're
go
just
through
horrific. Yeah.
just to get an ounce of freedom, and it's like it is good that we feel, and just thinking about Corona too. Everybody's so worried about COVID and the actual disease of it, but it's like 22% think Trump voters are the worst and 20% think Biden voters are the worst. Like, clearly we're not all that worried about COVID being like our worst enemy, which, like, really, if you think about it, nature is our worst enemy. Like, nature is the thing that kills all of us in the end, one way or another. Like, we're all gonna die at some point, and it's because of nature. Nature is cruel.
Now, that assumes that death is a bad thing.
I mean, that's true. I guess, yeah. I guess.
There are worse things. There are worse things than death.
Losing your soul is definitely worse than
right.
losing your life.
The world, the flesh, and the devil are our worst enemies.
That's true.
Know.
You make a good point.
So now, and obviously, society falls into the category of world.
Yeah.
And we have to worry about that, and culture. We have to try to guard against letting that eclipse the place of God in our lives. And that's what it's become for a lot of people. It's almost a religious fervor, and these are crusades that are going on. Yeah. This insane attack on the Capitol, all the siege of Portland and Seattle over the summer, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
That's just insanity. That's just people who have gotten to the point where they're so fanatical about their worldview that they feel like they have to have a battle about it.
Yeah.
Instead of just accepting that, okay, we live in a society where there are numerous values.
Yeah.
Probably 350 million or so, different perspectives on, what makes life great and what makes life worth living and how things should be run. It's going to be hard to find a consensus there, but that's the job.
Yeah.
That's what politics is supposed to be about, is finding a consensus, not painting the folks on the other side of the aisle with a brush that makes them out to be, bad folks.
Yeah.
People are saying, you're a poopy pants. No, you are a poopy pants. No, you pooped more than I did. No, you pooped first. Come on. This is 2-year-old behavior.
That's really
let's move on.
Yeah, like
and
my
let's
1-year-old.
Yeah.
That's how they battle things out, and it's the same. Yeah, honestly, when my 4-year-old wants to insult somebody, she calls him a poopy diaper baby. She'll point around the table and say, grown up.
So insert fascist or communist or
Nazi,
liberal or conservative or whatever.
Yeah.
And you got the same basic process going on.
Yeah.
They haven't moved past that ability to manage conflict in a resolute way.
Yeah.
Because nobody listens to the other people and finds common ground. Yeah. They listen to the other people with a sense that I'm going to listen for you to make one slip, and then I am going to hammer you.
Yeah.
And tell you, oh, see, there you go again. You're just a big ignorant poopy pants.
Yeah, I mean, it's like my husband and I, one of the principles that we try to live by when we're arguing with each other, and really just anytime that we're talking about something serious, is we try to view the things that each other are saying in the best light possible. Because it's really easy to misconstrue. You say something and I'm like, well, do you mean this? Like, are you implying this? And it's like, if we want to actually get along with each other and live together and work toward a common goal, which that's the point of our marriage. That's the point of a family. That's the point of our country. We need to live with each other and work toward a common goal. If we want to actually do that, we need to try to be charitable and try to view what each other is saying in the best light possible, so that we're not always saying, like, attributing bad faith to each other.
Yeah.
So
The presumption of innocence.
yes, exactly.
Yeah. And the principle of don't assume, ask. If if something strikes you wrong, it's like, what did you mean by that? Because it kind of felt like maybe you meant something derogatory.
Yeah.
Ask about it, you know. Maybe somebody said something in ignorance. You know, it's always better to assume that people are doing things that are hurtful out of ignorance rather than malice.
Yes.
It's always better to assume that people just don't know better. It's best to assume that people are doing the best they can with what they have at any time, and that helps us to be able to work together positively rather than waiting for somebody to tip their hand and show how evil they are.
Yeah.
You know,
it's like when people, you know, search through really, like, you know, 12-year-old tweets trying to find something that can be misconstrued just so that they can cancel somebody that they don't like. And it's like, that's a good reason not to tweet, first of all, but also, like, it's just silly. It's just like vicious. And when you say, like, to assume, you know, ignorance rather than malice, like, there's multiple reasons for doing that. First of all, because most of the, like, you know, that is that even if they are being malicious, it's probably good to assume that they're being ignorant, because that's the best way to get along with people. But also because everybody in the past has said things like either just something slipped out, or you said something in a way that you weren't quite, like, thinking it through or whatever, where it sounded worse than you actually meant it. And people are ignorant all the time. People just, like, people's like general state of being is ignorance, I think. And so
when I get in a crabby mood, almost everything seems nasty.
Yeah.
You know, they talk about mood as being like you're in an elevator in a building. The lower you get on your mood, the darker everything seems, the more dismal everything is. Everything.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't matter. The higher your mood, the more things are bright and tolerable, and everything's like, oh, well, that's no big deal. You just tolerate stuff.
Yeah.
You just have, and that's where the problem is. People need to take care of their own emotional states.
Yes.
Take a look at their own self. Be at peace with themselves.
Yeah.
If everybody was at peace with themselves and was, you know, sincerely trying to be better and to get along, what a wonderful world it would be.
Yeah. So the end of this Reason article, just to finish it off, it says, while we're expanding the realm of human life that's beyond the reach of government, much of what it does should be devolved down the political food chain, closer to the people who are affected, to reduce the likelihood of subjecting them to policies they despise. Ideally, as much decision-making as possible should be returned to individuals. And then they say, like, you know, this isn't going to guarantee that anyone's going to just suddenly believe in the government again or whatever, you know, but it does mean that this might give us all a little necessary breathing room while we figure out once again how to get along with one another. Like, that the more freedom we have as individuals to make our own choices, I think the easier it is to get along with other people. Because if you're, you know, when the government's regulating your own private personal behavior, that makes people angry, you know, that makes people upset. Like, think about the whole baking the cake situation. That actually would be a good episode topic about, like, you know, the whole, like, bake the cake, gay wedding cake court case thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's like because it's an interesting libertarian and Catholic topic, I think. But anyway, you know, it's like when people are being forced to serve businesses one way or the other, when Twitter is shutting people down because they don't like what they're saying on one side or the other, when Parler gets shut down because Amazon is claiming that it's, you know, hateful or whatever the reason is. It's like, even those, obviously that's a little bit different because those are private companies making those decisions. That's not governmental action, but still, it's just like that just ramps up feelings of hatred towards other people. And we need to have less of that so we can actually get along and work toward at the end of protecting the rights of everybody.
Right.
So should we talk about Stoicism versus nationalism?
Oh yeah, yeah. That was the first thing that I had
Yes.
read and that I had sent to you.
So this was a really interesting.
The cosmopolitan view.
Yes. So I was a philosophy major in school, but I didn't learn much about Stoicism because it's an ancient stream of philosophy, and I focused more on kind of like modern existentialism, that kind of, and religious philosophy. So anyway, I didn't learn much about Stoicism in school, but I read a lot about it this week in preparation for the show, and I think it's really interesting. There's this article from libertarianism.org called Stoicism versus Nationalism, and then it says, adherents to ancient philosophy of Stoicism were deeply committed to cosmopolitan ideals of treating all people with respect and dignity, regardless of race or nationality. And I think that this is a really... So this article was actually written back in August, so it's not quite so... it's not really talking about post-election drama kind of stuff, but I think that this stuff is like... obviously, Stoicism has been around for thousands of years, so I think that this is kind of relevant all the time, especially now when we're talking about, you know, I think Trump and his supporters are a little bit more like nationalistic. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, it talks more about the, you know, the kind of process of how people look at things rather than, and the principles rather than the current content that's going on, which is always kind of a helpful way to take a step back and say, okay, what's the process of history? What's the process of the world, and how do things happen the way they happen, rather than getting caught up in the drama of every particular moment and never being able to see the forest for the trees.
Yeah.
You know, it's nice to be able to take a step back and say, okay, in what way does this nationalistic viewpoint cause problems versus having a more, what they call a cosmopolitan, which is, for some reason, when I think cosmopolitan, I think of the, you know, the vodka and cranberry juice.
I do too. I think of like
or that magazine that's like always
crap.
has all those, has all those, you know, how to be more pleasant in the bedroom.
Yeah. Yeah,
say nice things.
Yeah.
That would help.
So yeah, we won't go too much into this article, although I do think it's really interesting. They say, you know, nationalism is the belief that economic, political, and social systems should be structured in whichever manner that best supports the interests of a particular nation and the state that rules said nation. By contrast, cosmopolitanism is anchored by an axiomatic commitment to the core proposition that all human beings, regardless of race, religion, or political orientation, are part of one universal community that compromises the whole of humanity. This is what we were, I mean, this is going to be the theme of today's show, this cosmopolitan idea. This is what we were talking about. We are all, you know, as Catholics, we believe we are all made in the image and likeness of God. That means we are all one family. We are all sons and daughters of God. And that
includes the people that from the other side of the world, the people that we don't like, the people that we don't agree with.
Yeah.
You know, not just our flesh and blood, who we have enough problems getting along with.
Yeah, exactly.
But the people who you know, are spread across the world. Everybody deserves dignity, and everybody deserves freedom. And,
Yeah.
there's some basic human rights that need to be promoted. And nationalism a lot of times conflicts with that.
Yeah. Because nationalism, I mean, if you're just trying to be nationalistic, like, that's where you get a lot of the kind of, first of all, like, military conflict situations, which are definitely a lot of times anti-libertarian and anti-Catholic. But also, like, tariffs and economic policies that are just trying to, it's like, there's a lot of things I like about Trump, but when he talks about, we need to have steel made in the US, and we need to, just promote all these, like, US industries. It's like, well, okay, that can be good in a way, but, like, why are we saying that all of the products that we buy and use need to come from the US? Is it because I think there are arguments on both sides of this. Like, you could say that there's a lot of other countries that mistreat their citizens and their workers and really employ slave labor to make things. Like, I do think that
That might be a valid reason to not want to trade with folks like that.
Yeah.
Because you just don't like how they deal with stuff.
But once
It's
again,
like,
the reason
I've got certain neighbors that I prefer to deal with than others.
Yeah.
If we made a batch of cookies and we wanted to give some away, there's some people that I'd be happier to walk up on their front porch and give them cookies than other people.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's just how it is. I
Yeah.
mean, that just kind of comes with being persons. But nationalism is basically selfishness on steroids.
Yeah.
Taken to a much higher degree. Why do I have any more affiliation with somebody in Montana than I do with somebody in Mexico?
Yeah.
I probably share more values with a lot of folks in Mexico than I do with Montana, just because we happen to fall within these artificial borders and boundaries and affiliations. It's not natural, and it's not readily sustainable in the long run. And so I think that's where a lot of times that's where the problem is going to have to be. It's that, and they talked in that Stoicism as like that we want to move toward a more cosmopolitan worldview where all the world has these republics, and it's basically everybody has access to markets, everybody has access to the economic freedoms, the social freedoms, the cultural freedoms, the political freedoms that we all should have.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough figuring out how to do that. It's certainly not. We certainly don't have any goals of having a one world order.
Yeah.
That's not going to work. That's even more ridiculous than having nations.
Yeah.
I
think they talk about that in this article. Yeah. I mean, because we as libertarians, like we just talked about it, we actually want less centralized power in terms of like government and more individualistic. Like, we want to have more choice as individuals. We want smaller nation states, if anything, but we want those nation states to respect the dignity of everybody else in and out of that nation state. Like, the one point I just want to finish that I was making before about, tariffs and trading and whatever, is like, it comes down to why you're doing that. If you're doing it because you feel like, well, we need to protect our citizens and we need to protect the people of our country who are making these products, even if we have to pay more money or whatever, it's like, that's a stupid reason. If you're doing it because you say, well, we're going to put a tariff on China because they treat their citizens horribly, because we actually care about the citizens of China, even though we're here in the US. Like, those are two different reasons. One of those is a more cosmopolitan view, and one of those is a more nationalistic view. So anyway, yeah, it's interesting. They talk in this article about cosmopolitanism is an important development in human affairs because it's so unusual historically. Like I studied biology in school. If you read a lot about biology, you realize people are very tribal by nature. Like biologically, we are tribal. Especially like it's really interesting when you study how pregnancy hormones affect women. One of the things that pregnancy hormones do is make women want to be closer to people who are more genetically similar to them, which is a really interesting thing because if you just think about it, raising a baby is a huge job. It's like really hard raising a child.
It's a colossal pain in the butt.
Yeah, exactly. And so you
have to deal with people who have poopy pants all the time.
Yeah. And it's like, when you made me lose my train of thought, but that's okay. When you have
the hormones and the tribalism.
Yeah. So tribalism is something that's inherent to us. That doesn't mean it's necessarily good. As Grandpa Dale likes to quote all the time, nature is what we're made to rise above. Like it's good to want to be around people who are going to help you take care of your children, help you be the best person that you're going to be and whatever. Obviously, those are good things. It's not good if you're saying, okay, I only want to be around Black people, or I only want to be around Asian people, or I only want to be around white people, or whatever. Like, if you turn it into a racist thing, obviously that's not good. But anyway, so this is saying, fear.
Why is that not good?
Because we're all one human family. We're all the same. We're all made in the image and likeness of God. Those characteristics about yourself don't say anything about who you are as a person. Just because you look a different way doesn't mean that it is saying anything that matters about you. Like the leftists and people who say like, those are the people who want group identity. Those are the people who are actually the racists, who are saying your characteristics about you, whether you're a woman or a man, whether you're whether you're Black, white, Asian, whatever, a person of
LGBTQ.
Those are the things that matter about you, and those are the things that I'm saying. This is from the leftist point of view. They
might matter to you individually, but that's not what makes you worthy of dignity.
But they also say that those people should group together because those people are victimized in the same way or whatever, which is obviously just silly. Like, it's just silly. It's like
it just makes them alien from the mainstream.
Yeah, and I mean, it fundamentally what it's doing is it is racist or sexist or whatever, because it's viewing a group as one thing. It's attributing characteristics to all the members of a group just based on something that they can't help. The fact that I'm a woman, like, I was born a woman, I can't change that. That's something about me that is inherent to my being. Now, being a woman is a good thing, and there are differences between men and women, but that doesn't mean that I have less dignity. It doesn't mean that anyway, we're getting kind of far into the weeds on this point, but I think it's an important point. But I guess my point is, like, racism, sexism, nationalism, all those things are inherent to us because those are very, like, natural things to feel. But that doesn't mean they're good, and it doesn't mean that we need to give in to that. It means we need to rise above and try to view people as brothers and sisters, no matter what they look like, no matter what their differences from us are.
Yeah.
So,
and there's been the argument made that to have like an America first point of view, or to have some kind of any kind of sense of affiliation, and we prefer economically, politically, whatever, these particular groups, in a way that takes away from the the actual value of any of those groups. You're valuing those
Yeah.
groups based on a characteristic that doesn't have anything to do with why they're valuable.
Yeah.
So, if I say, I'm only going to buy from Farmer Pete because Farmer Bob's grandpa, insulted my grandpa.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, what if Farmer Bob has better stuff at cheaper prices?
Yeah.
What kind of idiot am I that I'm saying, oh, I'm going to hold a grudge and
Yeah.
punish myself and basically provide charity to Farmer Pete
Yeah.
and not hold Farmer Pete to the same kind of market forces
Yeah.
that are necessary for the improvement of the world.
Yeah.
It's the market forces that improve the world,
Yeah.
not nationalism, not
Yeah.
tribalism. Tribalism is what got us here in the first place. Tribalism is basically what's going on now.
Yeah.
When 20% of the people say
Exactly.
that tribe is the red tribe is bad. No, the blue tribe is bad.
Yeah.
They're the poopy pants.
Yeah.
It becomes ridiculous, and it's pointless, and it's something that everybody ought to just get over.
Yeah. And it's something that us libertarians were like, well, you're all bad, but we're still gonna try to work with you, and we're gonna let you have the freedom to be bad to yourself. We just don't want anyone else to tell us how to.
Right.
You're bad. You're bad.
We hear what you're saying, but we ain't paying. You go ahead, do call your tune, dance to whatever music you want to dance to, but I don't have to pay the piper.
Yeah.
I don't have to affiliate with that, and that's okay. That's why the individual and the smaller the natural social groupings are that are making decisions about what affects that group, the better.
Yeah.
How can people in Washington, know what people in, upstate New York need, in rural Texas need, in, southern Florida need? How can they know all those things, and how can one rule apply to all those?
Yeah.
It doesn't. Those places need to be making their own decisions. They need to be figuring out their own stuff.
Yeah.
There's some basic rules of the game that we need to set down, but a lot of this other embellishment it just becomes obstacles rather than enhancements.
Yeah. Think about, even if you think about, like, okay, let's say I live in Kentucky. Like, if I'm just one citizen of Kentucky, like, has the governor of Kentucky ever met me? Does the governor of Kentucky even know me? Just me living in any town in Kentucky? Like, that's why I think, obviously the president doesn't know every citizen of the United States, and therefore doesn't know what they need. But even the governors of the state don't know. Like, I think that's why I think, like, hyper local heads of government, like even mayors, but even, really what it comes down to is the best people who are going to know what the needs of the people are the people who are in community with those people. So, like, my church community, when somebody has a baby, we say, okay, let's set up a meal train for this family, because we know that family is going to have a transition into having this new child in their life and whatever. So we are, as a community, are going to get together and help them. The government doesn't know that. They don't care. And guess what? They can't care about everybody because
they shouldn't. They shouldn't.
Exactly.
That's not their job.
Yeah.
It's our job as neighbors and as people in the community to love the people in our community. We need to act locally as much as possible.
Yeah.
That's not to say that we need to favor local people over other people. Especially in matters of economics. If somebody drives in with a cart and says, "Hey, I've got all this fresh seafood that I just brought in from the coast, and the guy down the street is like, hey, what about me? I've got all these fish sticks. Don't you like? I'm gonna buy me some shrimp. I need a po' boy.
It once again comes back to the idea that we've said before of think globally and act locally. Like you have to think globally in terms of like we are all citizens of this planet, but act locally in terms of caring for and working to help the people around you, because ultimately that's really who we can affect. So let's try to boogie through this article. They're talking about how Aristotle was talking about the difference between races, and then during the Enlightenment, phrenology came about, and so these are all kind of different forms of like
basis for tribalism.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Basically, just bases of racism, and that he talks about Diogenes, the first rootless cosmopolitan. Diogenes was an interesting guy.
He's a freak.
Yeah, he's not somebody that I would want to hang out with. It says he denied all rules of social decency, urinating, defecating, and even masturbating in public. Like, okay. But, his big thing was he said, it says in ancient Greece, Greek men were defined by their relationship to their local origins, their family, and of course the city-state they lived in. These three identities were essential for the self-image of Greek males. In this context, it was especially shocking when Diogenes, asked where he was from, quipped, "I'm a citizen of the world." The word for which in the original Greek, I don't know how to say it, but it's basically the root word for cosmopolitan. It's like cosmopolites. I don't know how to read Greek. But anyway, he was the first.
It's a person of the world. Person of the cosmos.
Yeah.
I'm a child of the cosmos. I'm not a child of Athens.
Yeah.
I'm not a child of Sparta. I'm a child of the world.
So he was just he made the point that these conventions artificially divide people. And that's ultimately what all of these things do. When you're saying I only care about Black LGBTQ whatever, it's like that's ultimately just dividing people further and causing more division and infighting. So they talk about cynicism and stoicism. So Stoicism was a school of philosophy that believed the ultimate aim of life was to live well, and that living well required moral virtue. They talk about the founder of Stoicism was Zeno of Citium. It says he was not a dedicated or conscious cosmopolitan, but some of his students basically kind of evolved his ideas into cosmopolitanism. They talk about three of the big Stoic followers were Cicero, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius. This is an interesting article. You should definitely listen to it. But they talk at the end about how Kant was kind of influenced by this. Let me go down here. Sorry. And they talk about we're Stoics evil globalists, because that's another thing that we were talking about. Like, does that mean, some might read this and start to get nervous. An all-powerful emperor stating his allegiance to humanity sounds like a recipe for a one-world government, and that's obviously not what we want as libertarians. But they say critics of globalism and cosmopolitanism often evoke the fear of a world order consisting of one supreme state ruling over all people. However, the Roman Stoics were not arguing for a one world government. Instead, they were merely arguing that our moral allegiance is owed ultimately to humanity as a whole, not to our individual states.
And they were more Republican. Most of them were more Republican than imperial.
Yeah.
They would say, we don't need an emperor, we need a republic.
Yeah. It gets really interesting. They're talking about, so we obviously as Catholics believe the reason that we're all one world, one human family is because we're made in the image of and likeness of God. Now, the Stoics believed, if I'm getting this right, that this was based on the fact that all humans have reason and rationality. That's the reason that we are all citizens of the world. The endowment of reason not only affords us rights, but also creates a sort of universal brotherhood. And I guess this was something that Marcus Aurelius was defined and kind of described the best. I haven't really read any of his stuff, although I think it would be interesting. I've heard that his meditations are good, actually. So anyway, according to Aurelius, we're all cosmopolitan by our very nature as people. And this is ultimately because of our rationality. And then when they're talking about the legacy of Stoicism, they say, importantly, the universal nature of humanity present in Stoicism was adopted by Christianity, which came to dominate European religious life. Like, obviously, we do think that we are, we're all one human family. They talk a lot about Adam Smith and how Adam Smith was a big defender of Stoicism, or he was influenced by Stoicism. And then they talk about Immanuel Kant, who wrote one of the finest treatises on cosmopolitanism entitled The Perpetual Peace, was heavily influenced by both Cicero's De Officiis, which means on duties, and Marcus Aurelius's teachings found within his diary, which is his meditations. So reading that article got me very interested in reading further about Kant and Stoicism, because Kant is one of my personal favorite philosophers. I even partially named one of my children after Kant because I love him so much. And I will, if you don't know anything about Kant, I'll link a little, like a kind of a 5-minute just introductory video to Kant's philosophy in the description. But I think he was
Are we going to talk about Kant today, or do we need to kick that over? I mean, we're coming up on toward the end. I think we're going to give short shrift to Kant.
I know, maybe we should talk about Kant a different day, because I have a lot to say about Kant. But so yeah, let's talk about Kant next time, I guess. But
yeah,
for right now, I did want to end on a Catholic note. It's funny, I was doing laundry yesterday, and when I do laundry, I have to walk a lot because we live on the 7th floor of an apartment building, and we have to go down to the 1st floor to get laundry. So anyway, when I do laundry, I usually have some time to listen to podcasts. And so I started listening to this podcast that I'd never listened to before called Every Knee Shall Bow. And it's about Catholic evangelization. And I know about this podcast for a couple different reasons. First of all, one of the people in there does another Catholic podcast that I've listened to for a while called Catching Foxes, which is good. If you like, if you like Catholic podcasts, I guess. They're a little more explicit, but I do like them. They talk about things in a very real way. Anyway, so I just was like, I'll try this podcast. I'll listen to it. So I listened to the episode. It's just from the last few days, called Finding Light in Dark Places. And one of the first things they talked about in here, totally random, was they were talking about Stoicism and Marcus Aurelius and all this stuff from a Catholic perspective. And I was like, this is interesting, since we were going to be talking about it today. They made the point that, like, Stoicism had some things right, but they definitely get some things wrong from a Catholic perspective, in the sense that, hold on, I made some notes, let me find them. They were saying Stoicism basically views they put a lot of emphasis on morality, but they do that because of a sense of duty, not really out of a sense of love. So they were talking about how Stoicism kind of misses the point, because they talk that it's the difference between doing things out of a sense of love, which is ultimately the Christian or Catholic goal, versus doing
right.
things out of a sense of duty. And
the highest sense of, the agape and the all that.
Yeah. and they said that, like, you know, you should really just listen to at least to the intro to the episode, because it talks about this better than I'm going to. But they say how, you know, one of their principles was apathy, like trying to not feel emotion, I guess. And so they're talking about how a lot of things, even Marcus Aurelius was saying, are good, but people listen to him and think, man, he was such a good leader, but it's like, really, he was pretty emotionless and stoic. That's why we get the term stoic, right? Is because that's kind of like emotionless.
Isn't that a good leader?
Well, I mean, I think that we want our political leaders to be stoic. Yeah, we don't want people to be like.
I would love to have a boring, quiet government.
I would too, actually.
One that I didn't notice, and one where it's like, gosh, who is the president now?
I
I'm
can't
not
even
even
remember.
sure. I wasn't really even paying attention. It wasn't that big of a deal. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
That would be, I would love that.
I'm just talking from like the Catholic.
I would like to know who my alderman is and feel like my alderman has some sort of influence in my life.
Yeah. I think their point was more just from like the Catholic perspective of, you know, they were basically saying, in the Catholic view, moral perfection is kind of when emotions are in line with our rationality, right? Like, Stoicism is all about the rationality and all about just making things based on rational choices. But really, like, we want to try to bring our passions, our emotions in line with that. And that's kind of when we become like morally perfect, for lack of a better term. We can never really achieve that. But that's the goal we should be like striving.
In mental health, we call that the wise mind, the balance between the rational mind and the emotional reactivity. You don't want to let your emotional reactivity eclipse your rationality, for the most part, because rationality is the best way to usually make decisions. But emotionality certainly drives your motivation and drives your sense of what I should be concerned with.
Yeah.
What really constitutes an issue for me is more based on, a lot of times, more based on passions and in emotions rather than a lot of times reasons.
Yeah. I think they were making the point that like a lot of these Roman kind of stoic people would even condemn their own children to death for breaking the law, and would see them be executed without any emotion at all. And it's like, it seems like there's almost something wrong with that, in terms of like, you know, there's one thing it's one thing to be just, but it's another thing to be like compassionate and care about you.
Merciful.
Yeah, exactly.
Justice and mercy.
And it's not that they should have necessarily let them go off scot-free, because that, you know, once again, we don't want to just show partiality to somebody just because they're part of our family or part of our tribe or whatever. But so anyway, they're just making kind of a bit of a criticism of Stoicism, just in that duty for duty's sake is only part of the picture. We also, you know, we want to love the good and not just do the good. Basically, we want to have love in all things. So I thought that they made some interesting.
So
points.
what is love?
Well, love is willing the good of another, right? It's working.
That's right.
So,
that's right.
And I think, just to wrap this back to the very
beginning. Is it a feeling state, or is it a decision?
No, it's it's an action. It's an action.
Yeah, it's an act of the will.
Yeah.
It's an act of the will. Yeah.
I just thought it was interesting when he says, you know, bringing our passions in line with our rationality. I think when we go back to the very beginning of what we were talking about the riots and stuff, it's like, if you think about what those people are doing, those people are just acting on their passions, really. Like, they're being overtaken by their passions and saying, like, we feel so outraged by all this stuff, we're going to, you know, we're going to just act in a way that gets us what we want based on our passions. But what we really should be striving for is trying to bring that in line with rationality and trying to make rational decisions. Like, obviously, there's going to be things, like you said, our passions influence the things that we care about and the actions that we take, because we can't do everything all the time. We have a limited life. We have a limited number of hours of the day. There's some things that we're going to work to care about, that we care about and work toward, and there's other things that we're going to leave behind. And that's where our passions can influence that, but we always need to act in rationality and trying to accomplish those goals. So,
and the value of mercy and the value of compassion is important.
yeah.
I mean, that's, you got to have balance there between the justice and the mercy, between the reason and the emotion, between all that stuff. You got to have a life in balance. Anytime that you make a god of something less than God, you're looking for trouble.
Yeah. Definitely.
And it's interesting, you know, talking about this whole Trumpist tantrum and everything. Like I said, I watched Citizen Kane this week, and have you watched Citizen Kane? You ever seen it?
No, but like I know enough about it, but
No, you don't. If you haven't watched it, you don't know enough about it.
I've
But
seen lots of okay.
but one of the things is Kane is just this egoist who just has this interest in running everything, and he becomes a newspaper person, and he making all these newspapers, and then he gets this political interest where he wants to run for office. He gets caught in this love nest with Singer, and he gets his political career just gets hammered, and he ends up losing the election. And it's interesting because on the night of the election, they're mocking up two headlines. The first one says, "Well, should we run this? Victory for Kane," or should we run this? Fraud at the polls.
Oh. Yeah.
80 years ago, that's how people looked at things.
Yeah.
Either the good guys won or the good guys got ripped off.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, and that's a problem when we can't feel that we can lose a fair race. We can't be good losers. Then the game has become way too important.
Yeah.
It's just a game, and we need to keep it just a game. Life needs to be lived on an individual basis, not on a national basis, you know, and people who are willing to throw their lives, you know, craziness, going in and beating the paste out of, you know, Capitol Police, you know, killing some, and bullets are flying. When things get that extreme, you got to start asking yourself, wait a second now. Oh, how did it get to this?
Yeah.
How did it escalate from, hey, this is an election to see who is going to enforce the laws of the country over the next couple of years, to, hey, this is an election to decide our future, our prosperity, everything that matters to our life and to our, you know, our well-being. How has this become the entirety of our well-being that we need to be so vehement and belligerent about it?
Yeah.
You know, it's sad.
Yeah. Once again,
but,
it's when we're being driven by passion and not by rationality. But.
Well, and when the government has gotten just too big.
Yeah, of course.
The government is too important to trust to politicians anymore. And it's too important to trust to, it's become too important to trust to democracy because we don't trust other people. You know, it's like saying, Zoe, I want you to hold on to my kidney. I've got a kidney or my dialysis machine. I want you to take care of my dialysis machine.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I think I'll take care of my own dialysis machine.
Yeah.
You know,
You don't want
and
them falling
that's
asleep.
what these people are acting is like, this is their life support.
Yeah.
And you're threatening their life support. You're threatening their health care, their education, their money, their everything.
Because when the government takes over that stuff, then it is exactly the tentacles.
They get their fingers into everything, and then they're just, they become the whole show.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be the whole show. It should be a very boring sideshow.
Yeah.
It should be an interesting freak show, but not necessarily the main event.
Yeah. Oh, well, on that lovely note, I think we should end this.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Kant next time, because we both made a lot of notes about him, and I think it's really interesting how he was influenced by Stoicism. So I think this is a good intro to that. But yeah, I will.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
Dad joke.
If you're watching this, thank you.
Thank you.
If you want to see more of us, subscribe. I've had several people in the last week talk about watching the show. I had a family member call me yesterday and say that they were enjoying it, and so it's good. It's fun, like hearing people react to this kind of stuff and sharing it with people who I think actually care about these kind of issues.
Hopefully we become the main event, and
yeah, less of the freak show.
I don't want that kind of power either. I wouldn't trust myself with that kind of power.
I mean, it'd be nice to have more of a diverse cultural voice being heard. I don't think people who hold our views have a lot of cultural power these days. But of course, I don't want to monopolize that. I don't want to be the only one, talking.
Well, they have cultural power to the extent that we can find like-minded people and develop communities, even broad-based communities.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
We're trying to present, just for you and me, our sense of where we feel affiliated in the economic and political structure of things.
Yeah.
And so that hopefully other people will see that and they'll say, hey, maybe I can, maybe that's something that I can endorse too, or maybe that's something I don't want to endorse. And if you have reasons not to endorse it, put those in the comments.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell us tell me I'm an idiot. That's what I live for.
Tell us we're a poopy pants baby.
Yes, I am a poopy pants.
If you have anything constructive to say, we'd be more apt to actually take it and talk about it and think about it. But if you also want to just call us a poopy pants baby, that's okay too. So whatever.
It drives us.
All right, thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time.
God bless everybody.
Have a good week.
Welcome to the cosmos. Enjoy your time.